Hi everyone, welcome back to Sports Cabri. With me, like always, are Adi and Rishi, and it's time to discuss Manchester United. New appointment, of course. Ruben Amorim is going to be taking over from November 11th onwards, if I am not wrong. Um, this is, of course, following the sacking of Erik Ten Hag. After a poor start to the season, United were 14th when he was sacked. They lost West Ham 2-1. That was his last game in charge. Since then, Ruud van Nistelrooy has been, of course, sort of the interim boss, if you may call it. Or he's been there for two games so far, one cup game and one league game. Yeah, so he's got another game in charge. That's about it. Right before
Mhm.
Amarim comes in,
He'll be in charge of
two more games.
this weekend game also. Yeah.
Yeah, two more games until Amarim comes in because he's there. Yeah, I think his last game is against Braga. So there's a lot of stuff to discuss, especially with regards to the style of play, and we can go through a few things about how things will change tactically, and it's something that already a couple of United players have spoken about. Andre Onana, I think, probably the most recent to speak about it. He's acknowledged the fact that there will be a difference in sort of the way United play, the way they played against under Ten Hag, as opposed to how they will under Amarim, and the fact that he likes playing with the three at the back, and it's going to be very different. But before we discuss that, like all these technical things, we should just in general, uh, you're feeling on Amarim and you're feeling on the sacking of Ten Hag because you're the Manchester United fan. Was it like you didn't mind him staying for longer, or what was the vibe for you?
I mean, I felt his stay was a little bit too much, and when the board, decided to extend the contract, I didn't really agree with it because, it was not like a surprise decision where they said, okay, we might sack him because the writing was on the wall for a long time. Like we weren't performing well in the league, and more importantly, after almost 2.5, 3 years, we didn't have a clear identity. Like you can say, for some patches of this season, United were trying to be a little bit more vertical, a little bit more direct. Like when you see players like Bruno and Casemiro, like the first time when the midfielder or the forward passes the ball back, they hit it again over the top the first time. Like you could see that a lot. But except for that, you really couldn't. And you could see Dalo playing on the left because they wanted to make the pass towards the inside. Except for that, I couldn't see a proper build up style. We couldn't see a proper pattern of play. Like you couldn't see anything. So that had culminated to a point where we were like, okay, where do we go from here? Where do you, how do you improve it? And it got to a point where we didn't, we couldn't see any positives. We couldn't see anything. It was all doom and gloom. And the way we exited from the Champions League didn't help either because we were shipping goals left, right, center. There was no defensive solidity. And to be fair to Ten Hag, last year there were a lot of injuries, but regardless, it was not more like a personal kind of issue. Like you could see every time we lost the ball, we were trying to be so direct that every time we lost the ball, it was like a basketball match. Like because players were running at us and we felt like we didn't have players in midfield and defense. And that if given a contract, the expectation was that that should have been resolved. But if you can't resolve it within 2 years, I don't see how he could have resolved it within a summer. And that turned out to be true. I honestly was like, no, what were you guys really thinking? Like that, okay, he won an FA Cup final where he probably would have hyped up the players saying, listen, if you want, this is probably going to be my last game. If you want to end things on a high, this is the time to do it. And he would have riled them up like that and gotten a result where City players had won the league and were, probably they would have taken a step off the gas regardless of that. Like both of them played their main teams and United crunched out a knockout game win. So I don't know how the board decided to extend the contract on the basis of that. So I was never on board with that, to be fair. And even if the board did decide to extend the contract, how are they pulling the trigger now? Or why did they not choose to stick to the end of the season? Like, what is the plan? What is their plan A? What is their plan B? Like, what were the clear indications they asked for? So, more than the sacking or extending the contract of Ten Hag, for me, I had a lot of questions. Like, what is the plan? What were the thought processes behind all this? So,
Hmm.
of course, it is positive to see that like we were fairly quick when it came to Amarim. Like it looked like United had been working behind the scenes for a while, like before the sacking of it. But again, I wouldn't place all my bets on it. I wouldn't be too optimistic because this board is known for doing a little shady stuff. So I'm not going to give them any benefit of doubt. If I see the improvements, if I see things happen, then I'm going to be hopeful. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean the board is. I think you can question the board a lot of things. Of course, so like you said, you gave Ten Hag an extension and then you sort of kicked him out in 10 games, and just doesn't make sense. But yeah, it looks like they have done a decent job. At least they've gotten the services of Amarim. But Adi, did you think United would be able to get a coach who's already under contract? Because to me, it felt like they might have to look for coaches who are just available and who are in the market who aren't currently in a role. But do you think it's a win for the club, the fact that they managed to get um, somebody who's doing pretty well right now for his Portuguese side, and again the fact that he was under contract?
Yeah, I mean that perspective, dude. Firstly, like, I think they had the right steps of okay, rather than going for a short term, let's just go for the guy who we think can lead us in long term, right? Regardless of it being the man or not, I would rather, as I said, as we discussed last time, also rather have, because the season's still young, would rather have the guy who is going to lead you for the longer time. Be in the club. If you as a board know like this is like a free hit for a manager, he gets a betting period of let's say 8 months to get into the culture of England, the physicality of the league, etc. There's a lot of things as a foreign manager you need to get used to, right? Right from your media, the way they treat you, to like the pace of the league, style of the league. It's going to be very different to what he's been used to in the Portuguese league. Uh, Again, now you're going to play week in week out. You're going to have almost 3 games in a week schedule, right? Which is different compared to again your Portugal league. So the intensity is going to be very different. Regardless who the right man is, that is obviously we'll never know. But the club taking the step of okay, rather have a bold move than a conservative move saying okay, let's just ride the wave for the next 6 months, 8 months. Let's just take our time because at the end of the day, what is going to change in 6 months? Maybe you have two or three more managers who are available, but see if you have a management, if you have a team that you can build around, uh, in my opinion, in these days, I think getting the right managers for teams is very important because the amount of talent you have in the Premier League, just around the world, like in terms of football, it's you have a lot of talent. You can get a lot of players, certain type of players you also want. For example, a manager wants a certain type of player. You can go to the market. You have the money. You can get it. So, in my point was, why do you want to wait for 6 to 8 months for a manager? When again, in 8 months, you're not going to have many options. You can be aggressive, move for the guy which the clubs believe is the right guy, right? In this scenario, again, I don't know if he was their first option, etc. But at the end of the day, the club believed that Amorim can be the next guy to take them to whatever they want to do. And you look at his CV, you can't just ignore that. Like he started managed Braga, a very small Portuguese club compared to your so-called big three Portuguese clubs in the league, which was your General Benfica, Sporting, and Porto. He took them third in 2019-2020, finished third with that, which very small team, very small club, and finished third. Took them to the Champions League for the first time in a very long time, and then came to Sporting. Sporting had a trophy drought for what around 19-20 years, if I'm not wrong, because before he came in, Sporting was like the third club in the league between like Porto and Benfica. I'm sorry to say. So like yeah, he came into them, took in a very very I wouldn't say strong Sporting team because I remember when Arsenal played Sporting in the Europa League. I remember they were a pretty bad team, right? I remember they were pretty horrid. Like when I remember like I remember that I forgot who was managing. I don't know if it was Sporting at that time, but I still remember that team was very bad. And for that team to he took them under and won two league titles in 3 years. I think the credentials are there for a club to push on him. Again, we know this guy had like interest from Liverpool, had interest from West Ham also in the summer, and there were talks, etc., saying even he could be successor for Pep Guardiola if he was supposed to leave next season. So in terms of like stature of a manager, I think it's up there. Like you can't just ignore the facts of what he's done in the league no matter the context of maybe it's a weaker league, whatever it is, still taking a club like Sporting Lisbon, winning two champions in 3 4 years with way lesser amount of investments compared to your Porto and Benfica. They have way more money and they buy in a bigger market, bigger players. So you can always say it's a good job. And I if I was a neutral and I would just look at it, or if I was a United supporter and just look at it, I would rather support this decision than just waiting it out. Because what's the point of waiting it out for another manager when when the club just doesn't know if that manager will be available next season, right? Because you waited out everything. Next season you wanted to go for a guy, but he's just not available. Then there is no point for waiting for 8 months. Then your entire 8 months, like the point is like there is no point of waiting for 8 months on another guy where you don't have any certainty. Compared to okay, this guy is here, he's certain, he wants to come, taken the challenge. It's not like this, like the way I've heard him speak in the press conference. It's not like he's running away from it. He is very realistic about the so-called issues and the challenge he's going to face. He's accepted it and he's ready to take it. So if a manager is there and he has a CV, I mean, might as well bank on the trust and like just put it out there and let's see how it goes. And fair play
Yeah.
to what they did, right? I would always support that over the other.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask Rishi only about like how you're going to take to his sort of style of play, because even when I remember like Arsenal played Sporting in the Europa League, it was, yeah, it was not I wouldn't say it was the brightest team, but like it was very organized. He plays a back three, and if I'm not wrong, in that game he played a back three that comprised of three center halves. It wasn't like one of those guys was like a hybrid center half full
Oh,
back.
oh. Just by the way, I was not talking about the Europa League last year. I remember we played like 4 5 years
Yeah,
ago.
I know
Like
what you're talking about. I know what you're talking
I
about.
that's when I faced, and I
Before
remember they
COVID,
were horrible. So
because since
yeah, I
COVID,
was
it's
talking
been
about.
Ruben Amorim. Before COVID, it was somebody else.
No, I know what
Bro,
Ads
I
is talking
remember
about. Ads is talking
Coates
about
was the
20.
center back. He scored some. He played
Yeah,
like
yeah,
some
yeah,
mad
yeah.
game. It was that
Hmm.
game where I was
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah. I'm referring to the more recent one, the one where we lost to them in the Europa League. Um, but yeah, it felt like they were very organized, dude. Like at least that's what I took from that game. It was a frustrating like two legs, uh,
Yeah.
just to watch. Also, if like that's what I remember from it. I remember Ugarte was playing in that game as well. Somebody he knows now pretty well. But yeah, it was the three center halves, all who were like center halves, like proper center backs. It was two defensive midfielders who were defensive midfielders almost. So it was pretty rigid and it was hard to break down. But going forward, they had like the wide players who could do things on the ball. So I don't know if that's the same blueprint he's going to carry now to United or not. But yeah, it was he had the right balance and he had the guys to sort of hit on the counter and hit on the break. The pace was there out wide, but he had a strong, rigid core. Like it was almost like it was like a block of five that were very compact and very hard to break down. And then you had help from the fullbacks, from the wing backs. So it was like that. Rishi, do you think like United needs somebody like that who's going to bring that sort of level of organization and that rigidity and that structure to the team?
I think firstly that is very much required because the state we are in right now, like I said, we look very flimsy defensively because even teams who are struggling to score against us, I mean struggling to score in the league in general, are finding a lot of chances against us. And you can say that United as a team, we were very like wasteful in front of goal. But then at the same time, we were also shipping a lot of chances. At the minute we lose the ball, we've overcommitted. And we had midfielders too stretched. Our midfield was always overloaded. Our defense was always far too stretched. So like when you are playing like that and when you have a bad reputation for that, I feel the first thing a manager has to come and do is like sort your defense and sort your midfield. Like you just give some solidity. Like you just first give some positional discipline to the players. Like, okay, this is your role. You stay middle. You keep it compact. Force the players wide, or etc. You close the gaps down. Like, I feel even that was the case yesterday against City, that Sporting played. They were very compact, they were very narrow, and the minute they got the ball, they were very vertical when it came to passing. They were just looking for vertical passes, but they were not trying to lob it long as well to Gyökeres. They were trying to build up, but in a very quick manner. It looked almost like something that Conte was trying to do over the years. Like, and that is a different tangent, but I've always felt like Conte is someone who always has like some defense. He always plays with the back three. He has that defensive solidity. So even yesterday when I was watching that City game, like, yeah, like they, Foden and who was it? The flick back to Bernardo, like that was through the middle. So that was a little bit concerning. But overall, I felt like they were pretty compact, they were pretty defensively solid. And I feel we have a group of players who can play like the similar roles also, because I feel Rasmus Højlund can do a lot of what Gyökeres has been doing. He is quick, he can hold up the ball really well, and we have fullbacks who are really good at bombing forward also. So I feel when it comes to that, of course, it's a different ball game altogether. Like switching from Porto, I mean, from the Portuguese league, like Adi said, it's different physicality, different pace, different intensity. So, but I feel that is our primary concern, that we have to shore up our defense, even if it takes for us a while to, become a flamboyant footballing team. I think the first thing is to just lock up your defense and midfield and be a team that people struggle to score against. You're on mute, Dan.
Yeah, I was just again just looking at like what he's changed in terms of setup, right? And again, like the first thing that came to my mind is, so the guy left center back Rice was playing as a left wing back against Arsenal. So I don't know if that's him becoming more of like a progressive manager, of him thinking about like more attacking minded stuff. But if that is the case, the question again would just be like, what, like how would say like a Manchester United be set up under him? Like how would, like who would play these roles? Do United have the players? United at the moment, you don't have any left sided fullbacks, and like will you struggle with that, or like who plays at wing back? Because you don't see a lot of right footed wing backs, no, like these days. So I don't know. Again, these are just questions that are probably interesting to answer. And do you have like crafty players like who will play out wide? I don't know. Again, like it's
Bro,
it's
we
just,
have a wing back, bro. Just make Anthony play left wing back. That's it.
yeah. But bro, again, like it seems interesting. It seems like a very, it'll be a very very interesting next few months. But Adi, do you think the season is salvageable for him, for United?
I mean, yeah, as I said, bro, it's you get top five in UCL. The league is very young, only what 9, 10 games done in the league, and I think they're what 7 points behind the top five teams, whatever you want to call that. So I don't think they're far away. But again, as you talked about it, it's the manager is the manager, the players are the players, right? No matter how good your manager is, it also depends on the players to show up. And see, this one thing you can tell is this entire team that's been built over the past 3 years is mainly a Ten Hag team. You can say the players he wanted half the time, he pushed for them, and that's the players who are playing right now. So I think on a short-term basis, for like new manager coming in, would be to get the best out of these players. In terms of, I mean, see, best thing they can do right now, if they really want to push for UCL, at the end of the day, you can always keep it open. Ambition should always be like any team to win the title, no matter what, right? And it's until it's mathematically not possible, it's possible. At least as a sporting, as a manager, as a player, if you're going into a league, playing in a competitive league, it's always like we win it until we can't kind of mentality. At least that's what I hold standards for top teams, especially. So if that's there, well and good for them, right? And secondly, it's also a matter of getting these players again back to a cohesive group. Manager needs to realize and understand what the players want, who the players are ready to play for the club. Because I I wouldn't directly compare, this situation to what, my club faced like 4 years ago. Because like even we were in a similar situation, in my opinion. Only difference is we never had the money to spend on top players compared to this. Like this team has been built on a lot of money, right? So it's not going to be easy to be like, okay, let's again just spend more money. Like it's not going to be that easy compared to like at least for Arsenal, because at that point of time we were not big spenders. So the manager will need to have, like, for example, you've got in Ugarte, he's someone he knows. You got in Delict, you can't just be like, okay, now the manager doesn't like him, I can't, take him forward, right? They got Lenny Yoro, another young centre back. You have to play with certain players. It's the other thing. Now, just because again, I see a lot of thing on social media, like, yeah, Amirom is linked to Guy Chorus because he plays for Sporting under him. He's had a great season, etc. Fair enough, but you be realistic as a United fan. You already spent huge money last season on a striker and huge money this season. This season on a striker. So it doesn't make it realistic for fans also to expect something like, okay, we're gonna get him next season. Like you just can't. Like the manager needs to be realistic. At least in my opinion, I don't can't just see it happening. Never know it can happen. I just don't know how the club works, right? But again, manager coming in will need to get the best out of these two players because again, Hoyland is young, Xerxes is also young. They haven't overall. You look at these two strikers; they haven't adapted to the league well. I still think Hoyland hasn't had a run of games or adapted to this league fully properly. Whatever it is, the issues, I don't know if it was because of injuries, if he's not been integrated well, or like there are a lot of issues, like whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Under a new manager, you're a new player basically. You have a new day to prove yourself. So these two players are already there. They have to sit and prove themselves. Now you talk about wingers. They already have a left winger. I mean, we can say that they have their left winger, right winger, whatever position you would want to call Rashford in. So you can't again go and just because again Amiram is a guy who liked having certain type of wingers. Like I don't think you can go buy it outright in the like a costly winger or whatever it is. Like I think they also have a decent talent in Ahmad, where another player who's never gotten a proper chance to prove himself. So you can again you have certain pieces already there. Yeah, Bruno, new contract, a guy, captain, whatever it is. Like I think the pieces are there. Maybe the only, as you guys said, the only place they might want to improve is your fullback position and maybe your center. I think the center mid is the biggest issue there right now. So overall, I think for Amorim, talent wise, it's there. I think it's more about the mental side of the team itself. Like I said before, like I don't think in the Premier League when you're playing for a top team, talent is the issue. It is the mental state. How are you going to get all these players back together? How are you guys going to make them work with each other well? You can see to an extent in Chelsea, that's what Enzo Maresca has been able to do to an extent. Like compared to last season, compared to Graham Potter's season, you can see most of the players are pretty similar. Like it's the same talent that's been there for 2 years.
Yeah.
They've been playing a bit more better this season. You can see they have a bit more cohesion in attack, defense. They've been more uh, better in the finishing, etc. So it is a matter of can the manager get the best out of the players in terms of not just playing style, but also in terms of getting them in the right attitude and the right mindset to play for United, play for your club, whatever it is. And I think this guy can do it. Like I can't sit and like he's done it with Sporting, he's done it with his previous club Braga also. Like the opportunity given, I'm sure that's for me that's the main thing. Can a manager do that? And I compared to all the candidates out there, he was one of the few people who can do that, in my opinion.
Mm. With this change ready, Rishi, what are your expectations for him?
I think it'll be a little bit harsh if you ask a lot also because he hasn't had a summer. Like he's gonna come in and right from day one he's gonna have to take on the league, the Europa League. We have cup competitions and all that. So I don't think it's fair to ask for a lot also. But then again, you can't just like the reason United hired a mainstay manager and not a caretaker is because yeah you don't want to completely write off the season as well. So I like if he doesn't do that great, I don't think the fans have enough to be way too harsh on him. Like you can give him another year or so. But for the first season, I feel the squad is there enough to at least compete for European spots. By that, Champions League and Europa League. I'm not going to write it off. There are a lot of clubs in and around that area who have been performing well. So you can't ignore that also. So yeah, I think a European spot is pretty realistic this season at least.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think, dude, because the gap is so less, like you're 6 points behind the team that's placed fourth. It's not like it's insane. And honestly, like I feel like sometimes all you need is just that little bit of solid. Like just need that little bit of solidity, and like you just need like a couple of 1-0s here and there, and just see out games, be rigid, be strong, and like yeah, nick a goal at the other end, like almost play like very
But
old school
that's the
and
thing,
do it.
like ever since the start of last season, we've been having injuries like left, right, center. Even this year, like players start picking up a little bit of form, a little bit of continuity, and then off they're going injured. I'm not talking about the ones who are injured for like 360 days out of 365. Like I'm talking about players who aren't usually that injured. They're also having the fatigue. They're also having non-contact injuries. Some of them like so yeah, that's the thing, like we haven't had any continuity also, so that's also one more thing. That's and like this year the more number of games in Europe, so it's only going to be even like heavier, so it doesn't. And the thing is, like United, it doesn't take that much for our team to not look that great. Like I feel one person, Mainu, went out from our team and our midfield looks completely clueless. Like we had like Mino like fixing a lot of gaps. Like he was doing things that not a lot of 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 19-year-olds is supposed to come in and do. Like he was being extremely mature on the ball. So yeah, like it doesn't take a lot for us, our team, to look, like we're shaky. So that's yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, it'll be an interesting era that we're looking forward to. A couple of interesting games. Of course, his first game in charge will be after the international break, so you've got a good amount of time. United are away to Ipswich Town. That's his first game in charge. Um, would have been nice to sort of see him in front of Old Trafford, but the first game that he will be in charge at home is against Bodo Glimt in the Europa League. So that's something that I'm sure a lot of fans will be looking forward to. And everyone, you'll be hoping for a response. Adi, regardless of everybody else, there will be a response from the fans, right? Do you think there must be a positive response from the fans? Um, it already looks like there's a positive response, like after Ten Hag's gone itself. I'm sure after Amarim comes in, they should be up for it.
I mean, that's for any club. I don't think
Yeah.
any club you can't have an appointment and like a club, especially a young manager. I wouldn't, if you're talking about old managers, yeah, I get it. Like, for example, with all respect, if like United went for an Allegri or like Mourinho, you know what you're getting with them. And if the club or the supporters are like a bit, gloomy about it and like pessimistic about it, I get it because, they're, I feel like they're managers of the past, etc., whatever it is. But again, when you have young managers who are very young, this guy's like what, the youngest manager for United ever, like 38, 39 itself.
Yeah.
And these guys are like, you can crop them to the next generation managers. And when you get a manager like that, would rather have any club support the manager rather than just being pessimistic. You know, generally I've heard like this British media is just hounding on every manager, especially who come from abroad, saying, "Yeah, these guys haven't managed in the Premier League. They don't have experience in the Premier League, etc." Sometimes it's true, but again, context also matters, right? For me, whenever I saw Tenak from day one, I always kind of knew he wouldn't be a success, not for the fact of his playing style, etc. Those are all secondary issues. I think when you're a manager of a big team or when you're a manager itself, it's about leadership, bro. At the end of the day, we are getting into a footballing. It was there before, but again, you go back now, especially the top clubs, they're looking for young managers who are great leaders, who are great communicators, and who can lead a bunch of young. Like every team is looking to invest in the youth players, one of the best young talents, etc. And once you have that, you need to have the right manager to understand the youth, understand young players, understand all kind of players, not just young players, but also help them. navigate through their careers. And that's something I never saw from Ten Hag from day one. It was always like a lot of, so air quote bold statements. Like he made bold statements based on very flimsy friendlies, in fact. But I never saw him taking responsibility for the club. Whenever I saw them lose, it was never like, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
going to fix this. He himself was
that's
never
true.
confident in that
Bro
of like,
always
I'm going to fix
deflected
it.
blame. Like
Exactly.
he never took it on himself.
Exactly. And for me, it was never about results. Even as a rival, even as a fan, if I'm able to see a manager trying to do the right things, sometimes you have to add context. And that,
Yeah.
again, like with Ten Hag, it was different. Only thing with Ten Hag was he had the players he wanted. He spent a lot of money on certain players he pushed for, etc. And when you get those players, you can't backtrack by saying, we need time, we're not good enough, like this, etc. You just can't do that as a manager, right? And I don't believe that. I never saw this leadership qualities. Fair enough, he won two trophies. You can add whatever context to it. He won trophies. I can't just sit and ignore that fact. But if you look at the context behind certain games, even in those games where he played, he got lucky, whatever it is, right? Coming to the finals, but he won the final. Apart from that, you look at his entire career, it was like hanging on to an FA Cup, like hanging out to an what do you call that? Carabao Cup. Anytime they lost, at times he was bringing up cups, saying there's no managers who won back-to-back trophies. I'm successful. Like if
Yeah.
you're being realistic as a manager, looking at what a top club should needs to do, it is all about winning the right trophies. I'm not saying winning an FA Cup and Carabao Cup's not great, but when you're a top club, you want to win the UCL, you want to be competing in the UCL, you want to win the Premier League, you want to be pushing the top teams in the Premier League. And I never saw that from him, and he himself never really, spoke about it or like owned up to it, right? So for me, that was never there. And with Amorim, again, I don't know him personally that well, like over the time. But whatever I've heard from the small conferences I've heard, he looks like a solid guy who can do the job, right? I can't sit and this guy shows a person. As I said, he's firstly right now coming into it. I think any manager can accept the role with ease because they know that it's going to be a tough challenge and it is a matter of 6 months where you can sit and judge him and not right now. There is heavy pressure on any manager, but he himself also agrees and accepts that okay, this is not the same thing like how it's going with Sporting right now. You can't expect me to come in and just start winning games with left, right, center. And it is a matter of being realistic. And he knows that okay, there is a certain challenge, there are issues where I have to sit and fix. And I think he's a guy who can, you know, accepted when they're bad. And
Yeah.
even yesterday, and that's something that impressed me. Even yesterday, when he won, I can't sit and say this is genuine. Like, I don't know him personally. I don't know if he's being genuine. I don't know if he's being deflective about what he's doing. But he was able to agree that, okay, yesterday they got lucky against City and, they didn't deserve the win, whatever it was. Me watching the match personally, I didn't watch the first half. I heard that City dominated a lot in the first half. But from what I watched in the second half, coming into I was the second half, and what I was in second half, I think Sporting overall were a much better team yesterday. They're, and you can see the players play for him. They played for the manager. They were running left, right, center, like up and down, up and
Mhm.
down. And if you have players doing that, that really means they're playing for the manager. You go back to United, I didn't see a lot of players playing,
Yeah, that's true.
running back. Like that is the basics. And if the manager doesn't instill in you, no matter what you are, like if you're not running back, it is down to the manager. I always put it to the manager than the player because the manager knows if this guy's not running back, I'm going to take him out. Next time he learns to like run back.
That's
You
true.
could see a lot of time United they weren't doing that.
Hmm.
Let's take for example even take Pep Guardiola City. Like I see their wingers, I see their I see at times De Bruyne coming back, tracking back when they're going into a defensive shape. I see Bernardo Silva doing that. That's something I never saw that a lot with United. And with this team, I could see that the players play for the manager. I'm talking about Amorim. So that's a
Yeah.
positive side, in my opinion. I think overall it's a good appointment. I can't really sit and say, uh, if I was a manager, if I was a United supporter, I would be happy with this signing as a manager. Really. Apart from this, I wouldn't think and say there are any better managers in terms of prospects that I am
Yeah.
aware of.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
has also won trophies? Like it is easy. Like again, I like to compare him to Arteta in terms of okay, situation same young managers. One thing advantage for this guy is he's got a good squad. He's got the the practice of managing a big team in Sporting Lisbon. In Portugal, they are one of the top teams. So he
Yeah,
understands the pressure there and he's handled the pressure. So I think that will help him a lot, managing United. Again, the intensity level is different. That's my only thing. Like the intensity in Premier League, not just in England, but also the media intensity, the way they come to grill you, the way they try to manipulate some questions, the way they try to, get certain things out of managers. You need to be really like thick skinned, or you need to be very smart to like handle the media, handle the press, handle like even the intensity of the league. Like it's going to be tougher. It's going to be way more faster. But luckily for again, they have players who are adapted to the Premier League pretty well. But coming back, as you asked, like when I see those certain characters of like a manager being able to take in charge of even the team's losses, he's sitting there and biting those bullets. He's a guy who can get the team believing for him and playing for him. I think those are certain important characteristics, and if he can do pretty well, and whatever, good for them, I guess.
that's true. That's
I
true.
mean, it's
Fair
more
enough.
exciting, bro. Like I would rather want to watch or like face United more now because I think they have a competent manager where you can sit and actually have a good game, whatever it is. Like I think it is overall good for the league also. Like getting fresh faces, getting new young managers rather than the old regime where like you just again if you kept Ten Hag, it's fun, but again overall for the league it's good when you get in new young managers who are ready to change big teams, whatever it is, the luck of big teams, whatever you'd like to call it.
No, true. Exactly. I think it's more exciting of an appointment. It's an exciting appointment, as in it must excite a lot of United fans. It must excite a lot of Premier League fans to see somebody new, somebody again like a sort of untested um, piece. Like you
Bro,
just
one
don't
thing
know.
I wanted to ask, but like, bro, for Rishi, like this guy, from what I've seen, is more of a defensive manager than your Pep Guardiola tiki-taka football, which you always wanted in United, right? And again, you had a lot of issues with Ole, who was a guy who was very meticulous, who could play three at the back, and had the style of playing, big games with three center backs, your wing backs, your pacey wingers. Amirom's style is a bit similar to him in certain phases. I wouldn't say they're the same players. I mean, manager style, playing style under the managers. Like, I think Ole was more direct. This guy has a bit more build up from the back, has more passing sequences from what I've seen. But overall, it's the same thing. And you've always said you want a manager who can play a classic 4-3-3, fluid possession based football. So it is a conflict of interest from your side where like you wanted a you know, what do you call that? An aggressive manager, but also possession based manager. Would you like expect him to change his philosophy into playing possession based football? Or would you be like, no, if he's able to get results playing as dirty as I'm not saying he's a dirty manager, like playing defensively, but like, what if, for example, big games he goes into games more defensive than offensive? Would you be okay with it? Like, my point is like long term, would you want him to transition into four at the back, three midfielders, three attackers, or if it's a long term thing where your team is going to be a three at the back team for a long time, would you be okay with it?
For when it came to Oli, for me, the primary concern was like we looked okay as long as like we were playing a team that was much more comfortable with us. I mean, with them having the ball, because even it didn't have to be top teams. Even if it were like sort of mid-table teams who were slightly comfortable having the ball, we'd give them the ball, we'd sit back and we'd hit them on the break. We'd be very direct, very fast, and we'd like cut them open. That's pretty much how all these teams were built. And for me, the concern was that when we played teams that decided, like they were like, okay, you know what, we're gonna stay back, we're gonna let you have the ball and see if you can break us down. That's where the concern was, that we were not able to break teams down. We were not able to have attacking solutions, creative solutions. Primarily, we like led to a lot of like not even sequences. It led to like players having to come up with brilliant moments to bail us out. So that was the concern, and for me, I always felt that was not really sustainable. You can't just be a primarily counter-attacking team and then like depend on your clutch players to come like clutch, like to come up with like a moment of genius. That is not really sustainable. So for me, that was a primary issue. And the second one was that, like, he was not really being ruthless in the terms of just pushing us to that final phase. Like, it always felt like we were a team, okay, that was making consider like progress after progress after progress. You can say that to an extent, and then his own decisions like led him to his downfall. Like, for a while he was like, okay, I want young players, I need young players, we're going to look at the certain style. And then suddenly you change, you bring in an aging Ronaldo, you bring in like and then you bring in certain players who you thought would play. Like, I read in, I think, the Athletic, where he asked and spoke to Sancho and wanted Sancho to play right wing, where Sancho apparently clearly told him, no, left wing is the position I want to play in. And he went ahead with the purchase anyway. So knowing that Rashford was going to play on the left and Sancho could not really make that left side on his own, like whatever reason it might be. So I've always felt he was one of those managers who was not that tough. So if, as long as Amarim is
No,
being pragmatic.
no, but what I meant was I'm not comparing Ole to Amarim. I'm talking about the style. Like at that point of time, whenever you guys play three at the end of the day, the style of like playing three at the back is more defensive than offensive to an extent. If you're
Mhm.
having three defenders, you always have one defender extra because you're going to have one midfielder extra, one less midfielder or one less
Unless,
attacker.
yeah.
That is going to happen. So when you're going to play generally over the in a league for a long time, not going to sit and say that's not ideal or that's like, for example, that's not an ideal way to play football or that's not the right way to play football. But my point is like at a point of time where like Ole used to play that style of football, it is something that you really didn't like,
Hmm.
and it is more a bit of more of defensiveness than being a bit more progressive and attack in terms of at least playing style, right? And my question was more about, would you want the manager to adapt to United, or like you personally as a fan? I've heard like you just always like would rather have, like, even me, I would rather have a manager who plays like a 4-3-3, keeps the ball more, tries to create a team which wants to play with the ball more, and find solutions based, even defensive solutions and attacking solutions based on a four defenders, three midfielders, three attackers. Like my question was like, would you want him to rather you know over time transition into a 4-3-3 position based manager, or would, for example, my point is like, if he's comfortable he has a playing style, and what I've seen under Sporting, at least, it is more of a three at the back.
Three at the
I
back.
believe in Braga he was playing four at the back, but it was a different Braga side. Again, that was a more 4-4-2 team. My point was, would you want him to transition into a 4-3-3 long term? Maybe not right now, maybe 2 seasons down the line. Or would you, if it's always going to be three at the back, are you happy for the manager to play three at the back as long as he's getting the results? That's my point.
For me, at least, primarily, I'd want him to do what he feels is comfortable, and I'm guessing it's going to be three at the back, and he's going to have to bring in some sort of defensive solidity, because that's something I felt we've missed over the last 1.5, 2 years. So as long as, like, at least going forward for the immediate future, it's more than okay if he can play, like, even if it's not the most, say, attractive aesthetic football, as long as we have a defensive solidity, we have a shape, we have solutions. Primarily, like, if we can break teams down, if we can get behind them, get into goal scoring positions, and then, like, if we have a sustainable way of doing that, for me, that is a primary concern. Of course, like, going into the future, if it is possible later, yes, then transition into a 4-3-3, because, like, for me, I like watching teams which try and keep the ball, which try to figure out solutions, which try to break down defenses by, like, passing around. Like, as like I've always felt that the longer your team keeps the ball, that's like lesser time for the opponents to have and attack you. Like, the more you keep the ball, the more secure your team is. So I've always felt like that's one of the reasons why I've primarily felt like, okay, 4-3-3 going into a possession heavy side is more sustainable, is more, like, going, like, for the long term, it's better. but primarily it is about United, like, getting that defensive discipline, that defensive shape, and, like, getting, yeah, being a team that is hard to beat. Because right now I feel teams can just come and create a lot of chances, like they are running at us left, right, center. So for me, that is the primary concern that needs to be addressed. And then eventually, if it is possible, yes, then move to a slightly possession heavy sides, like you build up patiently and then look for solutions. But even then, if we are pretty successful with it, if the blueprint does look good, if it is giving sustainable solutions, then I really don't mind that, like, having a 3 and 3-4-3 also.
Yeah, fair enough. It's interesting because if he has gotten success and if he does get success in United doing the same thing, then why not? It's an interesting one. Ruben Amorim is uh, ever so close to entering Old Trafford, and it looks like it will be a three at the back, at least to start off his life in Manchester. But yeah, that's about what we have. He's nearly there, 5 days away from coming to Manchester. So we've already mentioned his first couple of games. He will be in charge. Uh, First game in charge will not be at home, away at Ipswich. So that's what we have for Amarim. Like always, thanks for joining, guys. Thanks, Adi and Rishi. Anjali asking, can the next show be on Manchester City? I don't think we do Manchester City shows. It's just, yeah, it's not a great team, unfortunately. Just kidding. Yeah. So that's that. Everybody, please do like and share the video, subscribe to Sports Company, and we'll see you soon.